Try to imagine Jerusalem. The holy relic, which was thought to be lost forever, returns to the city. The true cross shines again before the crowd. People cry with joy, sing psalms, and on the throne sits the victor, Emperor Heraclius. This is how textbooks portray him, a liberator, a hero, the savior of the empire. A man who defeated Persia and gave Byzantium a second wind. But this is only a facade. Behind the golden mask of the holy emperor lay a body that rotted during his lifetime and a court that contemporaries called a center of fear and debauchery. In his old age, Heraclius looked not like a victor, but like a shadow of a man. Chroniclers wrote about terrible swelling, his face and limbs were swollen, and he could not move. His body stank, and his skin cracked. His advisors turned away so as not to inhale the stench. Now think about it, the same emperor who once inspired the army is now powerless, like a body that has lost its strength and is decaying from disease. He was carried on a stretcher, and everyone saw not a king, but a caricature of a king. His body was a curse, the image of God in him turned into a disgrace, wrote the chroniclers. He was a symbol of an empire that had shone with victories yesterday, but now began to rot from within. And here's a question for you, can the people trust a state to a man who is unable to rise from his bed? Doesn't this remind us of some modern examples? But the Byzantines were forced to worship a half-corpse and call him, chosen by God. But illness was only the beginning of the decline. The real shock came when Heraclius did something that even Byzantium considered open blasphemy. He married his own niece, Martina. Try to put yourself in the shoes of that society. Every day you hear sermons about sin and purity, and the emperor, having just returned the true cross to Jerusalem, takes as his wife a woman with whom he has a blood relationship. The church was in a panic. But instead of condemning the emperor, some theologians rushed to come up with excuses. They wrote treatises explaining that the emperor is above the law and that this union has a secret meaning. In other words, they tried to legitimize incest. The common people did not believe a word. Chronicles openly wrote about blasphemy, and whispers spread through the streets, if the emperor allows himself such things, what will stop others? And then tragedy struck. The children of Heraclius and Martina were born with defects, one had a crooked neck, others had serious illnesses. For the people, this was a clear sign, God does not forgive even the most powerful ruler. Now imagine this scene, the emperor, his body decaying, appears before the people with his young niece wife and calls their marriage holy. This union became a symbol of moral decay. Because when power covers sin with holiness, the empire is already on the brink of disaster. But even incest was not the worst thing. The most terrible things were happening in the very heart of the empire, in Heraclius's court. His palace was more like an arena of intrigue and cruelty. The real masters there were eunuchs, castrated servants who had lost their manhood but gained power. They decided who would be allowed to the throne and who would be pushed away. Just think, a group of eunuchs holding the fate of the empire in their hands. Their influence was absolute. Want to rise in rank? Pay a bribe to a eunuch. Want to destroy your enemy? Whisper in his ear. They knew all the secrets of the court and all the weaknesses of the rulers. And also the poisons. Byzantine chroniclers describe an incident. At a banquet, one of the generals drank a cup of wine and fell dead before the guests' eyes. No sword, no battle, just a glass and a few drops of deadly liquid. But the most horrific practice was blinding. In Byzantium, they believed that only a physically perfect person could be emperor. If you lost your eyes, you lost your right to the throne. Therefore, competitors were not killed, but crippled. It was a legal, political murder. The picture described by chroniclers, a pretender to the throne lies on the floor, screams tear through the palace, and servants deprive him of his sight as punishment. No blood on the throne, but another person is forever removed from politics. Under Heraclius, this system became the norm. The court turned into a factory of fear, where the greatest threat to life awaited not on the battlefield, but in a cup of wine or at the command of a eunuch. And here's the paradox. Heraclius, who was drowning in debauchery and intrigue, at the same time tried to present himself as the chief defender of the faith. Constantinople comes to mind, on one street, a procession with icons and psalms, and on the next, fanatics with sticks shouting, "Heretics," and beating their opponents. The capital of the empire had turned into an arena of religious madness. What was the matter? 7th-century Christianity was not a single church, but dozens of groups that argued about literally everything: how many wills Christ had, one or two, whether God could suffer, or only the man Jesus. Now think about it, the whole country is at war over one word in dogma, and you can lose your life for it. Heraclius decided to offer a compromise, Monophysitism, that is, the doctrine of Christ's single will. It seemed that peace had been achieved. But the opposite happened: some bishops accepted the dogma, while others called it heresy. Riots and street clashes began, and entire neighborhoods lived in an atmosphere of hatred. Alongside these disputes, strange sects appeared. Chroniclers described them in the most vivid colors. Some allegedly gathered at night and, under the pretext of purification, performed lewd rituals, while others fell into ecstatic dances, shouted, fell to the ground, and claimed that this was how they saw paradise. Whether this was really a mass phenomenon or rather an exaggeration by chroniclers is not known for certain. And all this was happening in the Holy Christian Empire, under the patronage of the very emperor who had returned the true cross to Jerusalem. Holiness and lust were so intertwined here that it became impossible to distinguish one from the other. Heraclius was aging, and disease was consuming his body. But paranoia was consuming him even faster. He sent his relatives to monasteries, which were turned into prisons. A joke or doubt about the emperor's holiness could cost you your tongue, your eyes, or your life. Try to imagine this atmosphere: laughter, music, glasses of wine. And at the same time, the fear that your cup is poison and your words will be the reason for your execution tomorrow. It was a court where friendship meant nothing, because only the first to report someone else survived. But the worst awaited Heraclius after his death. His marriage to Martina turned out to be a curse. The children born of incest were sick and weak. One of the sons was taken to the square, and the crowd watched as he was brutally mutilated, depriving him of the opportunity to claim the throne. Chroniclers wrote, God punished the house of Heraclius. A dynasty that could have ruled for centuries crumbled in a few years. The emperor, who began as a liberator, ended his life as a symbol of decay. His name remained not as the name of a victor, but as the name of a ruler who buried the empire from within. And here is the main lesson. It is only one step from great glory to great disgrace. Doesn't history remind us of this every time?